So this week we have questions. It's question and answer. And if you want to ask questions about photography pricing, you can, of course, if you're with me live, you can ask questions. If you're in the replay, you can always ask questions in the comments or at Rosh Sillars on Twitter. And that's the way you connect with me. And of course, if you find this video valuable as we go through it, hit like. I do appreciate that. That's helpful. And if you share and, of course, comment, that's always very helpful too. And subscribe. Last little bit of house cleaning here. Of course, hit the bell icon if you want to be notified when I go live so you can ask me questions directly related to photography pricing. So today, I have a number of questions that I've gathered from various people who've contacted me and so forth, and some of the blog posts and comments, and just get the ball rolling. And one of the questions I often get is, how much should I charge for weddings? And that's a good question. We always talk about cost of doing business and so forth, and like, yeah, how much do I charge? Well, it truly, does depend on so many factors, but understanding what your internal hourly rate is. I don't say you charge clients hourly for weddings, maybe short stints or something, but generally I say do a package rate and they get so much for hiring you. In other words, a lot of value. But value does not mean cheap, and I think that's an important thing to understand. So, I mean, let's just, what a lot of people want to hear. I see the average range, from the really high to low is $2,500, maybe $3,000. And you say, wow, some people are saying that's really high, and some people are saying that's really low. And that's the point, is that there are people all over the board. There are people who are charging a few $100, and I'll give you a DVD and CD, and we're on our way. And they can't survive doing that. I mean, think about that. Think about this. Let's say you can fill every weekend for the most part. Let's call it 50 weeks a year, you get one wedding. That's a lot of work, a lot of time and reputation to develop and be able to get that. Client development, and to get 50 weddings a year, okay, now times that by $500. Okay, there's 200, it's 25, let's say $2,500? Okay, or $25,000 a year? $25,000 a year. That doesn't even include your expenses. You can't do it. Now, 50 times 2,000, there's $100,000, right? You say, wow, that's great, but there's still a lot of expenses involved to get that number of clients. So, the $2,000 to $3,000 range is still very reasonable. Now, some people do 100 weddings a year, and some people do 25, and some do 10. I mean, it just depends on, maybe destination weddings, you're only doing 15 to 20 a year, but you're being paid $10,000 per wedding. So there are a lot of factors obviously involved, but what I ask you to do is, if you times the number of weddings that you think you can do in a year, maybe you feel you can get 25 done. Well, if it's $500 that you're charging, hell, maybe you're charging $1,000 and you do 25. Well, there's $25,000 a year. Can you live off of that after expenses and taxes and everything that's involved? Probably not. And that's why it costs so much money. You have to get out of the 9 to 5, 40 hours a week mentality. You have to understand that there's more to it than that. And so hey, some people just want to do a few weddings and make a few bucks here and there, and that's fine. That, you're not going to stop those folks. It's usually a different clientele as a whole who are looking for a regular professional, and then someone who's going to be inexpensive because they just want a few pictures. Different clientele, and there's nothing wrong with either one. Okay, the next one. Oh yes, this is something that I hear a lot, and that is, would you explain this per image pricing? I'm not getting it. I have always charged hourly. And here's the thing. Here's the bottom line related to hourly versus per image pricing. It's taking the value the money that people are paying you, and taking the value off of your time and putting it on where it should be, which is the photograph. The photograph is where you should be. That's the value. And so, your time, if you're really efficient, you can end up losing out. And that's one of the things with when the digital revolution came around and people were still doing day rates and hourly rates. Hey, when we're doing film, I mean, you'd just be sitting around waiting for the film to develop, and that was part of your time. But now the efficiency of all that, so all that production during the shoot and pre-production stuff, a lot of that is gone, and it's all back on the post-production that most people aren't even noticing. They think, oh, there's no film anymore. No, there's hours upon hours, especially if you have a very intense style to your photography. There's hours of post-production, and you need to consider that. So you need to encompass all that into your per image price. So definitely take a look at the other videos related to per image pricing. Excuse me, and that will help you out. But the per image, it's again, you know, maybe $500, $200, $500, $1,000. I mean, I've charged $2,000 and $3,000 per image. Why? What's the difference between a $200 per image and a $3,000? Well, maybe I was only able to create 1 or 2 images during that day. Maybe the usage of that image was much greater than the $200 image. Maybe a $250 image or $300 image for a client was something that took about an hour to do. Not that time was the deal, but it's a lower production. We're all done. Everything was taken care of within an hour, and maybe a couple hours, and then we're done. And that's it, everything. And the usage was very local. So those are the differences. And so you have to consider everything. And sometimes I hear the criticism, oh, per image pricing is about volume and just shoving as many photographs down the throat of the customer as possible. Not at all. Not at all. However, when you do a really good job and they say they want 10 images, and then at the end of the day say, oh, we want a couple more since we have a little extra time, and you have to go back and do all the processing and spend that extra time on the post-production and deliver everything, but additional 20% more work, but you don't get paid for it, that's when there's a problem. That is when there's a problem. Say, I want a happy client. Fine. Yes, you want a happy client, but you're going to feel like you're being taken advantage of. And they're going to continue to take advantage of you. And eventually that relationship will fray because, you know, hourly, let's say you get done early and leave. Well, then now they're thinking they're getting taken advantage of. This way with per image, the time is, everybody's not watching their clocks. You know, everybody's not clock watching. Everybody's just looking for the best solution, the best photograph for the project. Okay, next question. How much should I spend on advertising? Good question. You know, the traditional, you know, if you're in advertising, the answer is 10%. Now you say 10% of what? Well, if you want to make $100,000, you probably have to spend $10,000. You know, 5%, 3 to 5% is quite often where people are, but you have to be very strategic. If you don't have any budget, if you're just starting off, then maybe going into social media, then the cost for your advertising is your time. So you have to start thinking of how much time do I want to spend, developing my websites, developing my portfolios, connecting with people on LinkedIn, developing good SEO so people can find me at least locally. I mean, how much time in social media do you want to spend? So it's time or money. And again, the traditional answer is 10% of your budget. So if you want to make $100,000, then you probably need to spend 10 or 5 to 10. And so that's the way I would approach it and build off of that. Okay, last question. I'm afraid of losing a job opportunity, and I know where this is coming from. So afraid of losing a job, meaning that they're not willing to expand on this question. They're not willing to hit send on that proposal. And you know what? You're going to have to do it. You can't spend too much time on your proposals. You need to have a workflow and understand what are the things that you need in each project. First, you know, when you get to the estimate and developing the estimate stage, you've had to have asked a lot of good questions. And so most of what you need to do is when you're talking or emailing, ask a lot of questions related to, you know, what is the timeline? What images were they interested in on your website? You know, were they on your website, they'd like a certain image and that's why they contacted you? Which one is that? That'll help you understand the production of what is needed moving forward. And once you come up with your price, you know your cost of doing business, you know how much you need to make off of your time. I know that gut-wrenching feeling, like I'm going to hit send and they're going to say, no, I was too high. Or they're going to respond immediately, hey, perfect. And then you bid too low versus too high. I mean, it's one of those things that look, there's no perfect anything. Either they want you for the price you're worth or they don't. And if it's a bidding situation, look, unless you're trying to underbid everyone, just give them your base rate, because chances are, if it's a bidding situation and they're just looking for the cheapest photographer, they're not going to be a good client in the long run. They're just going to look for the next cheapest photographer next time. And you're going to end up doing the job, losing money, and never hear from them again, because you won't work for that price again, because it wasn't the experience you thought it would be. They were rude. Quite often I find that, people want the cheapest are often the rudest. The people who pay you for your fair value tend to respect you and your time, and they're good to work with. Obviously, there are exceptions to every rule, but that is what I have seen. So just stand tall, put your chin up, and hit send. And don't spend too much time on your proposals. Have a good workflow. Understand what your pricing is, and go from there. Okay, if you want a question answered on a Monday pricing, I'm doing them about 12:30 every Monday Eastern Standard Time. So at Rosh Sillars, and of course, I highly encourage you to like and share these videos and let people know in the photo industry that this is what we're doing, because we want a healthy photography industry. And if we are all working with the best practices, we can all be our own brand, and hopefully, as much as possible. Look, the genie's out of the bottle when it comes to digital for everyone, and Photoshop for everyone, and social media for everyone, and photography, and that. So you need to work on just being solid, being who you are, build your brand, build your community of people that like your photography. And when you do that, you will succeed. Okay, we'll talk to you next Monday. Have a great day.